Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining Tuesday's Lunch and Learn. My name is Will Pedersen. I run our customer shop over here. We have one or two pre-submitted questions today. I see, Dave, that you're on. I'm gonna go ahead and allow you to talk. And let me find your question and we'll see, sir, if we can answer it. Here we go. And this is, okay. I'm gonna paste this in the chat for us here, sir. Chat. Looks like Maru is all over it. I have some clarifying questions around passing query results from an external entity to a form to display in text boxes and dropdowns. I figured out text boxes, but dropdowns don't seem to want to map due to data types. Okay,
so if you want to, do you want to like a quick, like high level view, like kind of like talking about what I'm trying to do? It's a very simple use case.
Yeah, please.
So you think, right? But so essentially what it is we're using an external entity. I know Josh had recommended that because we're talking to an external, like a SQL database on the server, of course.
Okay, sure.
And there's a table in there. So obviously I set up the external entities, went in and actually set up
all the plumbing flows,
the plumbing flows.
Okay.
Right. No, I didn't set up all 6 because I'm only using 2 of them. I only
fetch, maybe get by the ID one and then the fetch by ID one, maybe.
Fetch by ID and then fetch all, I think is fetch get.
There's also a special one called ID that just tells you what the ID of the mapping is. You should need to do that one also.
Okay. That I figured out. That's fairly simple. It's
you can return data. You're returning data from the database.
So I am actually, but it's now I'm getting, I think I've just gotten, I actually restarted my server just to make sure I wasn't going insane, because sometimes the data types don't always update per se, or sometimes they do, but they're lagging a little bit. And so I went in and now I'm kind of like, it's all just, you know how it is. You get too far in, you've made too many mistakes. And so I had it working. Everything except for drop-downs could be pre-populated. Text boxes work fine. Phone number box, mask text boxes work fine. It's just those drop-down date time drop-downs, date picker rather, work perfectly. But it's looking for this very specific data type, and I'm just getting wrapped around the axle on the data types and how. Like I'm trying to write down like what are all the data elements that I've defined and the output variables, but it's just kind of gone sideways. And so I'm not really sure where to go from there. I also ran into some issues where I know like the documentation said in the SQL database to create everything as a text data type, but Decisions doesn't seem to like that. So I changed it to varchar and that works perfectly. So
yeah, that's that sounds wrong.
And text was right like a few years ago. I filled out a submit. Text was fine, and then I guess Microsoft deprecated it a few years ago or something.
Where did so you have a form. That form is showing the data in an external database, right?
Yep.
And you want to populate a drop-down list. You want to populate the list of options in a drop-down list. Yeah. Where does the list come from? The actual.
Oh yeah. Okay. So the flow is actually 2 forms. First step is go out and actually get all the information, fetch all from that database, right? Then and then output it as I name it and say this is the name of it. It's the member data. Then I have a form that just says, okay, pick the token, and the token is the member ID, that unique, that primary key. Then it's saying take that token and pass it over to the get by ID, which then of course says, here's your token, match it up to the token field. And then pass that over to the next form, which is just a read-only form. Because the end use case here is a call center person at a health plan is going to be looking up members' information. They need to confirm it before they can proceed. They need to pull it from a database. So it's just a very simple flow. It's just the data types are just kind of getting me all messed up.
Let's just see if I can. I'll just build something and then let's see. Yeah. So first things first, let's create I'm going to mimic an external database. So I'm going to create a database integration, and I'm going to just add a table here. I'm going to just make it connect to like my account table, but it doesn't matter if it's my local database or not. It will behave the same. All right, so here is, entity account. So I'm going to connect to entity accounts. I'm going to get the whole table, and I'm going to get all the steps from my table integration here. So there's that. Now I'm going to create an external entity. So user defined types, external entity. I'll call this Dave test 1, and I will put 2 fields on this thing. I'll name one thing ID. I'll name one, and I'll call one email address, and I'll call this one, I'll call something created on, and change this to be a date time. That's my external entity. Okay, I've got my external entity created. So again, I got to come into my plumbing flows here, since this is an external entity. For any of you that are unfamiliar with external entities, I'd love someone, maybe Anthony, Ben, do you mind dropping a link to our document in the chat? They're really neat. They're a really cool feature that doesn't get much use. So I need to tell the external entity what the ID of my type is. So I'll come here and I'll say my ID is select from flow entity ID. The ID is going to be the ID. What I'm going to do, you'll see, is pass the account ID of my table into the ID field here as the primary key. So that tells it what ID to use. And then I'm going to edit the fetch. And here is where I'm going to bind the external entity together with my database integration. Integration database.
Are fetch and fetch all different?
They are. Yep.
Okay. I've been using fetch all.
Okay, that could be part of our problem then.
Okay.
Here's our table, and I'm going to use get by ID here. So get by ID. Done. Sorry, someone's messaging me something that's I'm chuckling about. I apologize. So I'm going to now map I'm going to create like the binding between my external entity and my thing. So the account ID is going to come from ID. It's the input, a default input to the flow here. And then I have to build up my external entity from the results set from my database here. So I'll say build data. I'll go to input mapping. Oh, it doesn't keep that. So build data. And I'll expand this, and I'll pass an account ID to an ID. I'll find email address and pass it. And then I'll find created on date, and I'll pass it to created on date. Now I have effectively the ability to run right-click actions on my report. So what I'll also do is do fetch all, since this is what you've done so far. And what I'm going to do is go to my integration database. I haven't been asked a question that requires me to do a bunch of build outs. So appreciate it, Dave. It's nice to get some complex questions here. So here's get all. And what I'm going to bind this get all with is a list mapping step. So I'll search list, and I'll come down and find list mapping, because I need to convert the return from my account into my external entity here, and then pass that list out to the end step here. So get all, my limit count, I'll say ignore. And then I'm going to configure my list mapping step. The output type, I'll search Dave and find Dave tests 1. And my input is going to come from my get all step. Now this is a special mapping step, so it has this thing called an item mapping editor here in the top. And what I can do is I can select build data on my output type. And then I have this thing called underscore input here. And again, I'm going to do basically the same operation you just saw, but this step iterates the list and maps each item in the list for me. So one list comes in mapped, and different list comes out under the name output. So I can come to my end step here, and I can
and that's inputs you just mapped, right? In that show mapping editor on the list. I think that might have that.
Yeah,
mapped.
Correct. Underscore input is shows as an individual entity account result here.
And you just map that to item. Or to the
yeah, you're correct. You build data on item, and it'll break out the fields for the output type, and then expand input, and it'll give you the fields for the input type. Map your property to property, and it will blazingly fast do a list map for you. So list comes in, different lists with the same values or some different values or whatever comes out. So if you need to just do a list transformation, this is a extremely efficient way to do that.
Okay. And so in this case, I'm just using that token ID. So I could map the input underscore input over to that token field in the build data. Yeah. Gotcha. Okay.
All you're passing along is the ID itself.
Yep.
So yeah, your external entity would have ID, and then you would just map ID. And yes, you could same thing is the same exact thing as I did here, just excluding these other two fields, right? Create a thing called ID, and you see I'm using the primary key from the account object as the input for that thing here. Anyways, that's going to give me what I'm going to do is go back and let's create a report here. I'll create a new report. And now this report, if I find, I'll add, I should see external entities here, and I can click, I can find Dave test1 source. I have my 3 fields, ID, email address, and create it on. So that that fetch all plumbing flow is now running for me, mapping to and giving me this object or this data. So if I run that report and I right click, I have no actions currently, but that's okay. So then what you're going to do is build a custom, I'm assuming you're building a custom action in your flow. And so what I'm going to do is come build a user action, create user action. I'll just need, I'll leave it name the same. And we're getting close to the area where you're asking your question here. I'm going to show a form. Now on this form, I'm going to say, create new form, some regular form here. And right now I don't have any drop-down lists. So I'll just drag a couple text boxes. This will be called email. And I'll drag a date time picker. And this will be called created on. I'll drag a button. I'm going to save this. And then I'll go ahead and do my mapping here. Input mappings, look at entity, map email, and create it on respectively. If I save this and come back to my report, so back to my report here, I'm just going to make this a little bit better since I'm going to create a regular folder here called all data. And I'm going to quickly put a page in a report. So bear with me just a sec while I get this set up. So create page, page dashboard, page, create. Find a report viewer, span it. I'm going to pick or create my report, pick existing, look at all, select the report I just created. Okay, that's good. Save this. And then I'm going to come to all Dave's data, right click, manage, page, add page or dashboard. Call this thing data. And I'm going to pick the page I just created, named all my apps, lunch and learn, page 1, and click save. And if I come to all Dave's data, I can see my report here on a folder, easily accessible. And if I look at, I right click, I can see user action flow. And now I can see that data in this form. So now I have the opportunity to do whatever I need to do in this flow. Really, questions about how we got here yet, Dave?
Yeah, I think I did not do any of that. I basically just have a flow. I have a single flow that just does the get all. And then just says, give me the token from the user. Then it says, take that token and match it up and push it into the form corresponding, which that part works. It's just the keeps throwing errors now. There's just some data. So maybe I just kind of need to like delete everything and start over. But I feel like I need to really focus on the plumbing aspect of the external entity, because I feel like that's where I kind of probably went wrong. Because it's saying, oh, I'm looking for this data type called like data structure something, and it's not finding it anywhere. Let me just see here. It's yeah, like if I try and go do mapping, it's like I'm looking for defined type, and then it's got the name of my data structure, and I'm like, but there's nothing in here that matches that. Everything's strings, everything's date time, that sort of thing. So it's just I probably made a mistake, took a wrong.
Let me see if I can. What you're doing yet really doesn't using an external entity here doesn't benefit you in any way, if the way I understand it. I'm going to try to build a flow.
Even if the data is coming from an external database? Or...
Yeah, because you don't need an external entity to fetch the data. That's what the database integration gives you automatically. You need an external entity to hook portal actions up to an entity. That's the thing that the external entity gives you. So I have that user action 1 flow, right? So let me just I'll do this really quick. Let me kind of get, I think, what you might have. So here is a data grid. I'll pick my type, which is the external entity type. Yeah, leave all this stuff called this data info only. I'll change this to like single select. Data name is selected data. So this is, I've got my get all step. I have my first form, and then I'm going to pass it to my, what I imagine you're doing is my get step. And then I'm going to have a second form show, and I'll use the form I just created here, which is one of the forms, form 1. All right, so here we go. Data comes from get all. The ID comes from selected data.id. And then on here, I show, this is called what? Entity. So here, if I look at item, I can expand entity and pass an email address and create it on date. So if I run this, let me see if this mirrors a little closer what you have. So here's this, here's a list of all the accounts. I can click an account and progress forward into flow. And then now I have like the details around a particular account shown to me. This closer to what you have today?
A little bit, although we ask for, hey, give me the primary key, and then I'll show you just that record. But yeah, close enough. So, okay, so it sounds like external entity might not be needed. I could just do the database integration and then just use that, pull those over, get them.
I'd recommend that you explore
both. Yeah.
Well, yeah, like, because this is the view. If you want your users to look at data in the way you want to deliver, you want to deliver to your users a web application that allows them to search and filter data and take action on that data.
Yep.
Use reports as your context, not flows. So imagine you see something like this. You're building like a UI for your users to like do billing or something, right? They're going to go to a web page. They're going to see this. There's going to be actions or charts on the top. They're going to have a report. They can filter this report using report filtering. So if we need to find the guest account. Okay, great. I found that guest account. Now let me take action on that. Like, let me do something with that. This is a pattern. This is a really powerful pattern for us. Yeah. I recommend thinking about it not as a flow that runs forms and takes data from users, but reports that show data and then flows that are the activity from, the activity undertaken by that user. If that makes sense.
Okay.
Does that make sense at all?
A little bit. It might not be our exact use case, but it's pretty close. I think, yeah, because it's a call center, so they're going to need to. We're actually going to be doing iframes with we're going to publish these to an API, and they'll be served up in our current interface at our regular platform, and then they would. So maybe a report will work. I was just using a very simple form to say, please enter the member's ID. Pass that over, and then only show them, because it's protected health information. Of course, you can't just have them see the whole database. Now, what they're also going to do is have an option down the road to say, oh, this information is incorrect. I need to actually update this because I've got that person on the phone. So then there'd be another form to go in and just say, hey, update this. And then we would store that in a separate table with, here's the master table, but here's the actual updated information.
So I can get closer to what you're talking about, Dataflow. I mean, it's Dataflow too.
I see what you mean with the reports though. Like that is a good, yeah. I just don't know that it matches our exact use case, but yeah, I think I overused external entity maybe.
Yeah, if you're not going to show things on a report, you're not getting any value for it. Like that, like here, like, there's real no difference. In fact, there's just overhead between, if I find external entities, Dave test is my data and I use get all, that versus integration, database, local connection. This is the table I integrated with, right? My external table, and get all. These steps are functionally equivalent to one another. Like, this doesn't give you anything extra if you're not intending to hook actions to the data in this table. That's really all it's doing for you, that portal action experience. But I can get some, so I'm going to create a flow. I'm just going to use our default property grid here. Instead of building a form, you probably have a form here which prompts the user for your ID. I am going to just use our default property grid, which you'll see what I mean in a second. So this is probably closer. So if I right click and run this flow, now this is my default form, but you're in here, and I could do I could type in the account ID. I think it's called administrator account, and run. And then boom, now I have the details for that account shown to me. But there's no external entities here. It's just the external database.
It's just
fetching data by one of the steps you created, or running a query, right? Running a query step, or running one of the access steps.
So still add the database connection in settings, but then don't necessarily go do the actual data type that applies to it. It'll just pre-populate that by itself.
Yeah, correct. You get that for free.
Gotcha.
You get that. You can.
Gotcha.
You
It's
can
just in
include or
there.
exclude that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, cool. Thank you very much.
But I haven't answered your question at all about drop-down lists, so I'm not sure.
That might actually fix it. Like I said, every other thing other than, and I can get drop downs. I can do dependent drop downs, like, you know, if they select one in this one, I figured that out. It'll determine what shows up in the next one using a truth table and such. But yeah, it just seems to be. It doesn't seem to be a connectivity issue. It seems to be a data convention or schema rather. So I'll take another run at it and I'll figure it out. But yeah, I did figure out that you can't name stuff in your database text. It has to be varchar.
Okay.
So but I did fill out a ticket to get that updated.
Yeah, I saw a note coming in saying that I have.
I spent like 2 hours on it, and I was like, I'm pretty sure the directions say text, but okay, I'll just stick with that. I figured out.
I'd be extremely dubious about any of our documentation that tells you stuff in SQL to do.
I've been using SQL a long time, and I was like, all right, well, guys, maybe you're the creators of it. So
yeah, we aren't experts, and definitely our doc team members are not experts in SQL stuff. So sorry about any worries. Any problems there.
It was a very easy, no cost fix.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think this is great. Yeah, I'll take another run at it. I think that will probably fix the issue because every other element works. It's just the drop downs, and I think it's because it's looking for a very specific data type. And I probably took a left when I should have taken a right, etc. So thank you. I'll take another run at that.
Okay, you bet. All right, wait just a second here, everyone. All right, so here's a question from Manal. Is there a way to change the format of the columns on the Excel documents that the user downloads from the dashboard? For example, I just need to format one column correctly. I have record numbers on my report. They format correctly on the report, but when I export to Excel, they have extra commas and zeros. Is there a way to fix that, fix just that one column without using a report output handler flow and creating an entire Excel? Interesting. So how can I create this? Let me add a folder here. Manage downloaded Excels from reports. Okay, so if I built a report, a good thing, I need something with a number. Is it dates? So something with a decimal?
Yes, if you want, you can use like a unique processing ID too, but with just all numbers, no prefix.
Okay. Let's do this. Let me create, I'll create a data type really quick here. So let me just create an entity called Excel test. I'll give it a value property, make this a decimal. Edit that so I can get my add action, show add, show edit, show delete. And let me go add entity. All right, let me refresh so that my action context updates. Add entity user defined Excel test. I'll call this test 1. The value will be 1,000. And I'll add test 2. And this will be 10,000. And I'll do one more. Test 3. This will be 100. All right, so then I'm going to make a quick report of that data type. Okay, so user defined entities Excel test, and I'll put the ID, I'll put the name, and I'll put value. So you're coming here on the value and you're changing the format here of the number string. Is that correct?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so maybe we could do number.
And then I just do custom 0 under the portal settings.
Okay, interesting. So let me save this. Let me go to settings. Is it portal settings specifically?
Oh, no, sorry, not those, but like on your report, on the bottom, it says like where you had to choose portal settings, you can choose it to like custom.
Okay, so number format is custom.
And then
Okay.
0 with no separators.
0
And
and
then-
no separator.
Yes, so I just do unselect yes.
Okay, great. All right, so let me save this. And I will run it. So here you're downloading from the report header itself, right?
Yes.
So download, format Excel, output type default Excel template, proceed. Download this. I won't be able to show this very well, but let me see what opens up here. Okay, so it includes separators and it includes a single decimal for me, which is what you're seeing, right? It's not respecting that change.
Yes.
Okay, so how do I, the number, how do I get it to it?
I also tried doing it as an integer, but it still didn't solve the problem.
So if I look at this, let me try something really quick. I'm going to come here and create a group. Import. This place. So here's our report. So I want to just try something. If I look at this format, number, and I want to do, what's the best way to do this? Currency rounding, custom number format. Okay, and let me download this as an Excel. What I'm going to come do is I'm going to add a new default Excel file. So system, I can't remember where these are at, it's been a while. Designers, Excel templates. Let me just search for Excel templates. Template, default Excel template. Oh, good Lord. Manage, open containing folder, report output templates. I'm going to add a template called test1. I'm going to upload my file. Save it. I'm going to come back to my report. And I'm going to edit my report. Now, settings. Excel default template. I can pick test1. I'm guessing here a bit, but just bear with me just a minute while I see if I can get this to work. It might be that you do have to use a report output handler for this. Download, okay. Feed. That shows the same. I don't think it's letting me specify the type test1, proceed, download. Nope. Yeah, I think this is we need to get a ticket into the development team. Right now, likely the only way for you to control this, since editing that Excel template isn't working, would be to use a report output handler. But you can get you could run the step as an Excel and just muck with I think you could just muck with that one column. I don't think you need to build a whole Excel file. Can you change value? Let me look at our flow here. Excel steps.
I'm sorry, like I try to build the report handler flow, but I have like 60, like 70 fields.
Yeah.
Like each of them, which is just like, I feel like it's just redundant and it's like
taking for sure. Yeah, no, it's ridiculous. You shouldn't have to. Place value. Is there a way to set the data type of a column? Anyone on this call besides me? No. Place row. Let's try something here. See if there's a middle ground. That doesn't require you to build the whole Excel file. I'm gonna go back to my report. Oh, here's my report. I'm gonna add an output handler. Now, what does this give me as my input here? It gives me report data. It gives me context ID. Definition report. Or context ID. Okay. Okay, let's try this. This is ridiculously wonky, but it's worth a shot. So let's go, if we can find a run report step under reporting. This might be in a different location, is on earlier versions, might be under integration. On run report, under the report source, we can select report context. This gives us a report context ID. We can select this from report data, report context ID. This should give us the same exact report run that the user has filtered on the report, right? The actual filtering will and grouping everything. This will run the actual report from that user. The output type will be Excel file. And then we could just muck with just that one column. So if we looked at like data and we said like update or set values in column. This takes in the Excel file. It would be the column. We'd have to get the rows for each Excel CSV. Maybe it's something like this. That value. And then, or format number. This is a lot of work just to get what your number formatting to be respected by the download button. That value, loop back. So this would take in the file from the run report step, worksheet number 0, and it would ignore first row and auto select. And then you would pass in, like, this gives you an output. So the format, we would do format here, and then we would select, in our example, it'd be current row, field 3, number value. Now the format would be some sort of .NET number format, .NET number format, no. Sorry, I'm on my other screen looking here. F0, I'm gonna do one of these. F0, I think, says no separator. And then set value, we would pass in our current file, which is report. File type would be constant auto select. Worksheet number, we would specify. Row would be, I don't think it gives it. Let me get row from current row. Row, great. The column would be a constant, and this would be column 3. And the new value would be the output of our format number step. And then we would pass the first step there. I think we need to do one more thing, which is, actually, this might work. Let me just test this really quick. I know I'm burning through this really quickly. There's a bit of setup here. All right, if I run this report, I get a new option here under output type, where I can select my output handler flow. I can download this report, and I get no separators. Okay, I think this, to get you this today, this is probably the most efficient pattern. And in a report action, just to walk back through what we did here, there's a lot. In a report action handler flow, we used a run report step, set its report source to report context. It gets that from the input data to the handler flow. It returns an Excel file. We then passed it to a step that loops Excel files row by row, pass the value of the third column into a format number to remove separators. You'd have to look at the actual, there'd be some combination of separators and decimal removal that you could find on Microsoft documentation. It's not a decisions thing. We're just using Microsoft's implementation. And then we pass that into a set value step, which loops through all of the columns and then applies that formatted number, overwrites the value with the formatted number, and then passes that out to the end step. That will let you muck with that today, I think.
Gotcha. Thank you so much. Just one more thing. So it will take away, for example, like I have like 9-digit number, and then it just like, if it's like 1008 and then it adds a 0.0. So I have to create like one more format number to take that 0 off too.
Yeah, say that one more time for me. I'm sorry.
Oh, so like, for example, you said like it doesn't have any more separators, but it was adding like a 0, like a decimal in the end.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to create one more like format number in order to take that off.
Here, format, no separator and no decimals.
Mm-hmm.
Format numbers as string. You probably still want it to be a number column though. Yeah, maybe it's actually just 2-step. Let's see, what do we do to get it? Format number outputs. Oh, it outputs a string. So maybe the best way to do this would say no. Well, what about, actually, I'm probably making this too complicated. How about this? New value is actually this. Current row, field 3, number value, unformatted. No. Number formatted. Oh, it's not gonna.
Oh, usually if you choose like default, it will let you do no decimals and no
Default, yep. No decimals, no separator. We probably don't even need the format string, the format number step here. That should update everything. Let's check. Let's check again. Let me run our report here. Download, select our output type is our handler flow. Proceed, download, and let me open this thing. And I have no separators and no numbers. No separators, no decimals on that one column. So that's probably worth a shot. Really though, we need to get a ticket into the dev team to have them make sure that the downloaded report number format respects whatever the user puts in. And I'll ask someone to get that into the dev team.
Gotcha. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your help. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Hopefully that helps. So we'll post this on YouTube later if you want to like watch that at a more regular speed. Sorry, I burned through those really fast.
Yes, that would be great too. Thank you.
Yeah, Marie, let's please send the link to Manala once we're done, please.
Yes, you got it.
Okay, great. Any other questions from anyone in the audience today?
Yeah, it's Josh. I have what I think is a really simple question, and I think I've asked it before, but I forgot. Is there like a step that just changes the value of create data or a variable? So like I finish, so like for example, I go through a loop and then I want to reset a counter. So how do I reset the counter to 0? Right. So what I've done so far is I've just done a rule step and just output. That seemed to be the best practice on the documentation. I wanted to know if there is a.
I like doing it a different way. I think the PS team and I disagree here. There's 2 ways. Like, let's assume we've created a counter. So I'm gonna have I'll find like a for loop step. So I'll go create a piece of data here, right? So this is my counter, right? It'll be an integer.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then I'm going to pass that into my number of iterations here. All right, and then let's assume, I'll just put a placeholder step. Let's assume it's actually doing something. This will be, oops, wrong one. Next, a placeholder. So it loops, right? And then it does number of iterations. And you need to, like, maybe there's some logic. You could say, maybe there's some weird thing, right? You like true or false, right? Done. If it's true, if it's false, you want to loop again, right? For some reason, right? Just to give you a reason in this flow I'm making up in the moment to need to like set the counter, right?
You don't necessarily need a reason. Just okay.
I'm just for purposes of contriving this example, if you will. So you have this counter here, right? The way I like to do this myself, I prefer this. I think it's a bit simpler, but there's some disagreement on our team. Is I would use the create data step, right? And on the path back to the for loop, right? I would have it set itself to 0 and then change value on its name again on counter, right? So let's assume you set this was set to 10 the first time. So you set counter value equal to 10, you loop 10 times, you hit this rule, it's false, set counter to 0. I mean, it probably doesn't make any sense, right, in this example anymore. Right. But now you'll loop 0 times, or let's say you're going to set it to 9. You could have some sort of weird recursive flow here. But because the flow can only have one value for one variable, if you have the workflow pass back through a step with the same name and a different value, it will assume that value. Now, the other way to do this is with the mapping step, and a lot of people like this step. In a bigger flow, I don't love this step because it can get a little busy, but you'll see counter is it'll give you all the data available in the flow, and then you could come to mapping step and set it to 0 or to 9, like the example we just set. I find this to be cleaner because in a fairly complicated flow, you're going to have access to every piece of data in the flow, and it can the property grid can get a little unwieldy here. Ultimately, it's the same process either way.
Either create data. Data or a mapping step. Okay. Okay. So I mean, I just put it through a rule and then just passed it. Make it always be true because I don't put any criteria on it, and then I just output the variable again. But
correct.
That works. That works.
The flow have the flow go back through a step that has the same variable with a different value.
Exactly. Okay, thank you. Those are two good suggestions. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. And Alex, I'm guessing, sir, you're here about our in-app chat question from earlier that I stopped replying to.
Yep. I thought you had to jump to another call, so that's fine.
Yeah, there's really, I'll get you. You can't. I'll get you the folder behaviors. There's no where to find them except in the database. So it's distinct folder behavior type. And the two we care about here are default folder behavior type, like so there's your default folder behavior. I'm going to put this in our chat here. I think do you still have that open by chance, Alex?
Yep.
Yeah, so that's default folder behavior. And the only other one, unless you're doing a custom one, is probably designer folder.
Yep.
And there is designer project folder. Must be designer project folder. And then there is designer project folder. So if you are creating like folder extensions or other custom folder behaviors, you would do this same thing I'm doing here to find the folder behavior string. And then you just have to specify it in that step, unfortunately.
Okay. So it's default folder behavior and designer project folder.
Those are the two default folder behaviors that we have. I mean, there's a lot of others, but realistically, you're not creating like system folder behaviors or profile folder behaviors and things like that. but
No.
the same pattern applies. Like if you needed to do something clever, it's the value of the folder behavior type field on the entity folder table that you're looking for.
That's what I was to ask you. What is the table that you're querying?
Mhm. Yeah, it's the
Folder.
entity folder table. I'll drop this in our chat as well, and in our chat here.
Right. And one little thing, I was using before the Create SubFolder that is in the systems area, and the one that is the Create SubFolder that is under integration, internal services, folder services. There's a Create SubFolder step as well there, but this one asks for a folder ID for the new folder. So should I just precede that with a step that puts a GUID, create GUID and give it any GUID, or does it require?
That's what I would do. Yep, use a get GUID step and then pass that in as the ID.
Yeah, but that will be a new GUID, right? Because the folder doesn't exist. Okay.
Correct. Exactly right.
Last thing, I think that the answer to this is no, but just in case, is there a quick way to, from within a flow, to change the look and feel of that flow, like font, color, and the icon that is presented?
Of the individual step?
Yeah, I could not find anything, but there might be.
Yeah, it should be under step information shape settings. You can muck with these properties here. Override font attribute.
Sorry, what I meant is not for the step itself, but rather for the folder that I am creating. You know that folders you can.
It's I see. Yeah, it's the
you have something that
manage look and feel.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's actually it's not clever. There's a hidden entity in here. If I look in this folder with hidden, there is a thing. Where's it at? Maybe it doesn't exist till I make one. 1 second. Manage set look and feel. I'll update its color to red. Yeah, so there's this thing called look and feel of type look and feel. You need to add a look and feel entity, and then you'd have to muck with its properties in some way. I don't know that I've programmatically done this, but ultimately the folder tree is looking for the existence of a look and feel entity whose type is look and feel. I bet you can I bet on a save. I wonder if we could find this in like a save entity step. Look and feel. No.
Good look only.
Why do I feel like it's not searching anything? It's a good question. Maybe we don't let you see the look and feel entity. I know it's controlled by that entity.
I was hoping that in the same step where I create a folder, set up its look and feel, right?
Yeah, that's a great. I mean, that's fair to think that our look and feel objects are much newer than our folder objects are.
Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to scaffold the project, and when I create all the folders, I like my designer entities to be on a different color, and designing folders to be of a different color, and my data folders to have also icons and whatnot. But if that is not doable, I'll have to do it manually.
Okay, that's not accessible, and there's nothing in folder service about these. Integration, internal service, folder service, add account, get look and feel.
Okay, so there might be something there. If there is a get, there should be a set, right?
I think so, but nothing's coming up.
There's no set.
Yeah, I'm not sure we have the ability to do this today. Though, I wonder if you could just copy one. If this is like a thing, like you could create a look and feel. Well, you can't fetch it. Is there a don't we have like a copy entity step? Copy flow, get edit copy, force copy, or clone, maybe clone entity step? Nope.
Oh, there's a clone design approach.
Yeah, that'll do a whole folder. That's not gonna get you what you want.
Well, if I create a whole folder that is
If you have a
template,
full, yeah, you could, that probably will work, yeah. If you have a folder tree and then you just use clone for just a folder tree, I believe that should probably pick up the look and feels.
Okay, I'll try that one. Thank
Worth a
you.
shot. Yeah, you bet, man. Happy to help.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Anybody else got anything for us today?
Clone.
Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate the questions and time today. Who's on tomorrow? Maru?
Tomorrow we have Cameron Irby with support team, and Thursday we have Ashley Beer with pre-sales engineering team.
All right. Wonderful. Okay, great. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week.
I will.
You bet. Thanks, everyone.